And by the way, if you want to weigh in, if you're in, because there was a fair amount of reaction last night to the selection because of all the things that Caleb Farley has going on in his background, be it the opt-outs, be it the injuries, be it the recent procedures. And you'll hear from John Robinson, Caleb Farley, and Mike Vrabel over the course of today's show because, of course, we had our Zoom conversations with them. And Caleb Farley for the first time. He's a trip. I think you guys are going to really enjoy that. But we talked so much yesterday about taking the best player available. This is the best player available. He's a great prospect. And I'm not going to sit here and do like post round one draft day grades. I think that's a complete and total waste of time. And largely, I'm not going to fret over all of the things that Caleb Farley has been dealing with, whether it is the back procedures that he had, whether it is the ACL tear from a couple years ago, whether it is the opt-out, whether it is, if he ends up being, I know he tested yesterday negative for COVID-19, but he had tested positive earlier in the week. None of those things I'm going to worry about. None of those things am I going to fret about today because we don't have the medicals. And basically what John Robinson said to us last night, and I think it would be better, you can hear all of these things from me if you want, but I think it would be better if you heard them from John Robinson. Because what they went through in the draft evaluation process was how they're, whether they were going to be confident enough in the selection of this player, given all of the things that they have going on with him. And so John Robinson spoke about the confidence that they had in the selection of Caleb Farley, because, of course, that was all of our questions. Here's J-Rob.
Yeah, again, I'm no Dr. T, but our medical staff, they've dealt with a lot of injuries in the National Football League, and they feel confident in it. We spoke to him several times and said he was.
The video keeps cutting out.
They're having the latest procedure, and I have the utmost confidence he's going to attack the process to get himself ready as soon as possible.
And Coach,
Titans general manager John Robinson with us on Zoom last night. So they feel very confident. Their staff has seen a variety of different injuries across the NFL, and so we have to trust that his back is good, because if his back isn't, then I can't imagine they would have made that selection. It has they weren't willing to make the comparison last night because the situations aren't necessarily parallel. And of course, Mike Vrabel would take the player who's got injury stuff going on in his life to where Vrabel has to sit there and field questions from us, which he absolutely doesn't want to do. Mike Vrabel wants nothing to do with talking about injuries under normal circumstances. So, of course, in 2019 and now in 2021, they take a player who is coming off of an injury into this draft. And he said that he's going to be available, by the way. We'll play that audio for you later. I don't know how this bit is going to work, Lucas. By the way, Lucas, did you enjoy the draft? Where did you watch the draft last night? Because I was reinvigorated by the fact that we had actual sports content to discuss rather than just recycling the same things week after week after week after week in the pre-draft process. I don't think your mic's on, bud.
Oh, it's on. You just can't hear me, but you can hear me now.
Well, that's good.
I watched that in an establishment in East Nashville. No free shout-outs, but I did tune into Titans Radio for the majority of it and caught the end of the Titans Radio coverage on the way back. They crushed it, as always. Rhett Bryan's Open gave me as many chills the second time as it did the first time when he showed us this week. But, yeah, it was good to actually see picks happen.
Yes, picks have happened. More picks will happen, and we'll be talking about it all day long. 615-737-1045. Are you in or out on the Titans selection of Caleb Farley? Because I know there's a little bit of trepidation. And we'll spend some time on where he fits, what's left out there for people. 615-737-1045. But I want to know if you're in or out on this particular selection. I think it makes a lot of sense. I really do. I think that you're looking at a defense, for all the problems that we talked about with the Titans defense, it didn't necessarily need to be, or at least I didn't think it needed to be completely overhauled. But that's basically what they've done at this point. Yes, Jeffrey Simmons is back. Yes, Rashaan Evans, Jayon Brown, Harold Landry, Kevin Byard. Amani Hooker, who has played for this team before but will now be probably in a more prominent role. We'll see who ends up getting the starting safety spot alongside Kevin Byard. But they really revamped this defense in a way where they're I mean, we talked about it a lot. Nobody's going to do it publicly, but they needed better players. They went out and found better players to upgrade this defense. Now, what they will do today, it will be interesting to see how much they want to balance between offense and defense, because wide receiver, still a need. Tight end, still a need. Offensive tackle, still a need. You could probably find some help on defense as well, whether that's linebacking help, whether that's edge defenders. There are a lot of different ways that you can end up going in this draft over the next 2 rounds that we will cover today, that Titans Radio will cover tonight, 615-737-1045. Brian McClain writes in on YouTube. And by the way, Will Ball and Alan Kirby, they do a fantastic job setting everything up. Rich Ferris as well, making sure that everything goes smoothly out here live at 55 South in Brentwood. But Brian, so you can watch us on Zone TV. We got the camera set up. Brian McClain writes in on YouTube, I was kind of mad because I really wanted Elijah Moore, but I get it. So I'm kind of hoping that they trade up to get Moore today. Elijah Moore's still on the board. I thought that the Giants were probably the best crack at being able to take him at 20. That might end up, disrupting the Titans' plans, if that is in fact in their plans. I don't know what their draft board looks like, but they went Kadarius Toney. We'll talk about things that surprised you as well today, and we'll continue to take your calls, 615-737-1045. But I got to remind you, you got to come out to 55 South. You got to hang out with us here in Brentwood. We'll be broadcasting all day long until 6 p.m. when Titans radio coverage takes over. But I also have to remind you that our draft coverage is presented by my friends, my best friends at Two Rivers Ford. 1045 The Zone's draft coverage is sponsored by Two Rivers Ford. Two Rivers Ford, powered by Ford, driven by people. Your reaction and more analysis of the Titans selection of Caleb Farley last night in the NFL draft and more. I'm Buck Reising, and this is 1045 The Zone.
Last night, the Titans took Caleb Farley in the first round of the NFL.
deal with that, especially considering you haven't played in so long?
Yeah, I rebuke that in the name of Jesus. I'm expecting to be ready.
Listen. I don't know what your Bible.
You're up.
But the last time I read my Bible,
Preach to him.
it said whatsoever we ask in the name of Jesus,
Rebuke that back
it
injury,
shall
baby.
be done. The
It
Bible
shall be
says,
done. L5, S1, healed in the name of Jesus. That was Caleb Farley last night.
I can't hear you.
Tell him. Crank it up, Lucas.
Knock. And he said it shall.
It shall be done.
It shall.
I'm fading.
Open. And if you believe it,
Goodness. Man, I got such a kick out of Caleb Farley last night. That's the Titans' first-round pick. Talking about, Teron Davenport, our buddy from ESPN, asked him. He said, with all of the procedures that you've had at this point, and it is only 2. We asked him last night if there was another procedure that may be in his future, and he said they are categorically false. Any reports saying that Caleb Farley will need a 3rd back procedure because there had been some rumors, some reports out there floating around that he did not take kindly to. But Teron asked him last night, hey, what if they try to slow play you? What if they try to, take it at their pace and kind of ease you back into this? Remember, this kid hasn't played football in 17 months. And he said, I rebuke that in the name of Jesus. That was a great line.
Caller.
615-737-1045 is how you get in on the conversation. Robert is in Nashville. He wants to talk about Caleb Farley. What's going on, Robert?
Hey, guys, this is Robert, a.k.a. Richard Reising. I just wanted to comment on last night's draft. I'm sitting there when the Titans go on the clock, and the Titans general manager calls me, and he's like, man, I messed up last year's pick real bad.
Sure.
I don't want to lose my job. What would you do? And I said, look, man, Caleb Farley, he's got great film. He's a young man, high character, and he'll be a perennial Pro Bowler for the Titans. I think they hit a home run, one of the best picks in the first round, I believe. He was, the 3rd cornerback taken?
Correct.
But with all this injury stuff, which, he's a young guy, man. You get over stuff. Trust me. I've been painting 35 years. Your body adjusts, and I think it was a great pick, and and if there was a Hall of Fame for backyard football, I'd be in it. So I recognize great talent. You know what I'm saying?
No doubt.
So,
we're glad that John Robinson called and consulted you, Robert. Thank you for the call. 615-737-1045. Backyard football expert Robert calling in Nashville, telling it how it is. If you want to weigh in, we want your reaction to the Titan selection of Caleb Farley. 615-737-1045. By the way, we are live out here at 55 South in Brentwood. Come hang out. Man, they're going to get happy hour rolling early just for you, just for listeners of 104.5 The Zone. The bar setup in here is incredible. You're going to want to you're going to want to come check it out and pregame rounds 2 and 3 of the NFL Draft with our friends out here at 55 South. 615-737-1045. James is in Franklin. He wants to talk about the Titans' first-round pick. What's up, James?
Hey, first of all, love the pick. Just wanted to rattle off 2 statistics that I found while I was digging through Sports Info Solutions last night. Virginia Tech 2019 man coverage percentage, 39.6. Tennessee Titans man coverage percentage last year, 39.7.
Oh.
And Virginia Tech single high defense percentage in 2019, 53.7. Titans in 2020 was 62.8. So I think Caleb Farley is perfectly comfortable being out on an island without any safety help, and I think he'll fit in perfectly. I'll hang up and listen. Appreciate it.
Hey, thanks so much, James. We appreciate the information. We got a smart audience. Why we love the Zone listeners here on the radio station. Vrabel kind of talked about this last night, where you're spending some time on where he fits, because what essentially we looked at this offseason was John Robinson hitting the nuclear option on the secondary. And Malcolm Butler may have been a player worth retaining, maybe not at that. Well, I mean, certainly not at the price point, given what went down with the finances this offseason. Adoree Jackson, they initially heading into last year or heading into the fifth-year option for Adoree Jackson, they had picked it up, the first one that they have done for a first-round draft pick of John Robinson's in quite some time. And it ended up being that they did not think that that was the direction they wanted to continue to go. So what did they do? They swapped out a Mike Mularkey corner in Adoree Jackson, who was a good player. I know a lot of people were disappointed with him last year. A lot of people wanted to see him play better and play through the injuries that he sustained. Ultimately, he ended up getting a $6 million raise from the New York Giants. So the thought process with Adoree Jackson was at the time, I mean, somebody screwed up, whether it's the Titans or the Giants for paying him. Somebody blew it.
How he fits into the secondary.
But what we now have a situation in Tennessee where Mike Vrabel has gotten his own corner, essentially, in a draft pick in Caleb Farley. And he spoke on this last night in our Titans Media Zoom about how Caleb Farley fits in the Titans secondary.
I've missed anything, Terry. It's been your internet connection. I've absolutely missed that. I appreciate this.
Had to include that.
And I think that's something that they did a lot at Virginia Tech. You know, I mean, those guys were manned up outside, not a whole lot of help, and that's what they did. And so he's coming from a very aggressive scheme that puts a lot of pressure on those guys on the outside. That's what they've always done there, and they've been successful. So I think that, it's cat coverage. I got this cat, you got that cat, and that's what he's used to. So, we'll get him to learn what we're doing and see where he fits in.
That was Titans head coach Mike Vrabel talking about the fit for Caleb Farley in Tennessee in this defense. Now, they didn't want to get into who was going to play where, whether it would be Farley and Jenkins on the outside and Fulton in the slot. Mike said he wasn't really interested at this point in getting into that. There's enough going on at this point. They just want to get the guy here. They want to get their hands on him after, hopefully getting the medicals on him, and it would indicate that they did do a thorough job in the medical evaluation, which is absolutely necessary. And ultimately, like a lot of people are talking about this as a gamble in the first round. But if you were going to have a risky selection at all, and I'm not even saying that I would I won't even say that it's a risky selection, because again, none of us outside of John Robinson, the Titans medical staff, and Mike Vrabel know what the medicals are on him. So at this point, we're just going to have to let go and let football God a little bit. But the situation for Caleb Farley is that he's coming in with a little bit of breathing room, because in theory you have a starting secondary. Now, whether it would be a good starting secondary is an entirely different matter with Kevin Johnson and Jenkins and Fulton. But at least there will be some time for him to work himself into the rotation, for there to be depth behind the top line. Whomever ends up starting for the Titans will have plenty of time to discuss that. But the pick makes so much sense from a scheme fit perspective, and we appreciate James in Franklin for giving us those stats. 615-737-1045. We're also going to spend some time on who's left out there. There are a lot of good players left on the board. This is a good draft for the needs that the Titans have. We'll spend some time on that over the course of this morning, live from 55 South. But first, we go to Bill in Smyrna, who wants to weigh in on the Titans draft selection. Good morning, Bill.
Hey, can't we just pick up healthy bodies?
Are you talking about taking a risk on an injured player, somebody who may not be ready to go?
Yeah, that's like getting a used car and see if it still runs.
Well, Bill, if you think that the upside for the player, I mean, are you disappointed in the Jeffrey Simmons selection?
Who wouldn't be?
Well, what do you mean who wouldn't be? He's one of your best defensive players. I don't understand.
Jeffrey Simmons?
Yes, Jeffrey Simmons, the first round pick in 2019. Are you disappointed in the selection?
You're talking about Jeff? No, not with Big Jeff. No, I'm sorry, I got mixed up with somebody else.
Okay,
my bad.
So that was the situation. Like, look, now it's not a parallel situation, Bill. So hang with me for a second. But
what about Dupree? Dupree's in rehab right now, right?
Dupree is in rehab right now. That is correct.
That's my point.
Well, listen, everybody does it. Like, it's not like this is unique to the Titans. It's not like they're trying to, and I appreciate the call, 615-737-1045. If you're going to come and criticize the process, man, you got to know something about the process. You got to know who was selected and what the injury situations are. And again, Bill, I don't have the medicals. You don't have the medicals. And if you can be disappointed in the idea that they are taking, whether you consider them high-level risks, Dupree, honestly, probably a higher-level risk because of the length of the contract that they gave him and the amount of money that is attached to him rather than Caleb Farley. But even then, ACLs are so routine. Like, I'm not that bent out of shape. If you needed the best or probably the second best pass rusher in this free agent class, because Shaq Barrett really wasn't ever going to see the light of day and make it out of Tampa Bay after what they were able to do in the Super Bowl and what Tampa Bay has done financially to make sure everything hits, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, it makes a lot of sense. I understand why, the last thing that you want to hear about when you get a new player is, when is he going to be able to play? I do get that side of it, but that's not like it's something unique to the Titans. You have to go out and get the talent that you think can improve your football team, even if it might not necessarily be ready for OTAs. I guess we're technically in phase 1 of the offseason. But they've got plenty of time, and they know more about the player's physical condition than you or I would. 615-737-1045. Jay Weddle writes in on Periscope, if he can get healthy, Farley is a huge steal. I mean, this is what we're talking about. Like, you have, just because there was whether you consider it a risky pick or not, like, the first round was the round to take the risky pick. The first round was the round to draft best player available. Now, this best player available also happened to satisfy a need. That's a good position for you to be in. And now the rest of the draft board can play out where you still have wide receivers all over the board, where you still have the ability to add defensive players who can continue to improve this defense that's basically been overhauled at this point. 615-737-1045. Jacob is in Nolansville, and he wants to weigh in on the Titans draft day 2. We'll get you some best players available after Jacob weighs in. What's up, Jacob?
What's up, man? We need to go with Rondale Moore out of Purdue. It's a receiver. Man, this kid was a beast since he was a freshman, come out of Kentucky. Man, he's going to light it up.
No, he's an absolute stud. Remember, I went to Indiana, so I've seen Rondale Moore when he's healthy, because another player who has had injuries in the past, but like, don't get caught up on it. Football, you have 100% chance of getting injured. It's an insane sport that these people play. They're literally getting in a car wreck on every play, especially if you play offensive or defensive line. Like, injuries are going to happen. That's unfortunately a part of the business at this point. But yeah, look at the wide receivers left on the board. You're talking about Rondale Moore. You're talking about Elijah Moore. You go on down the list. Terrence Marshall is still out there. There are so many wide receivers in this class for you to choose from, as well as, Christian Barmore is there. Levi Onwuzurike, which is surprising. I mean, maybe not, given how people really kind of discarded this defensive line class. Tevin Jenkins is still out there. Azeez Ojulari. Like, you have so many different ways that you can work these 2 rounds today. The board has fallen in your favor. And honestly, it's as much about luck as at the time of the prospects that are coming out based on the needs that you have. And yes, there can be a degree of planning for these things, but still, like, this is working very well in favor of the Titans. 615-737-1045. Aries Graham writes in on Twitter, my first back surgery was in 1968. I am now 71. Several surgeries. It is not about healing. Healing is a myth. It's all about pain tolerance. Now, that's a point worth bringing up, because if you've never had back surgery, how can you speak on the idea of what it's like to go through back surgery? Now, there are obviously different kinds of back surgery, and this is one that it seems he did need a follow-up procedure for, and he did, he is disputing the idea that he will need additional procedures. Much in the same, I'm going to start using that, Lucas. I think that we should start rebuking things. It's I like the idea that we would cast out any negativity, but although largely I'm responsible for the negativity. But I would like to start rebuking. Maybe we rebuke bad calls.
I rebuke mock drafts that include trades.
rebuke mock drafts that include trades? Why? Rhett Bryan loves those.
At least in the second, third, and fourth round.
What, is it just too much heavy lifting for you? Did you try to do a mock draft and you get frustrated with the process?
It's just fruitless. It's fruitless to predict these trades. Like, just do the mock draft based on who has what pick. And, I mean, just don't muck it up with the trades.
Buddy.
I rebuke it. I've already rebuked it, Buck.
I rebuke it. I cast it out. Okay, I understand. You're very passionate about this. Well, if we're going to do it that way, like I rebuke the entire pre-draft process, what we just did for the last 2.5 months. But you want to talk about useless exercises? How many people had the Chicago Bears taking Justin Fields? What happened at QB1?
If anything, people had maybe Mac Jones falling to 20 with the Bears. Nobody had them trading up for Fields.
And how smug was Bill Belichick and Mac Jones when Mac Jones just kind of fell to their lap. Just, he goes to the best NFL franchise in the last 20 years, the most winningest franchise in the last 20 years. And Mac Jones, whose comparison is Tom freaking Brady, just ends up with the New England
you know
Patriots.
what? I rebuke player comparisons on draft night. That's what I rebuke. Devontae Smith to Calvin Ridley.
I saw Jalen Waddle as A.J. Brown. Get out of here with that.
Yeah, come on.
I mean, that's just and it's okay. Like, there can be some things that A.J. Brown does that Jalen Waddle is also
wasn't that
capable
Jamar
of.
Chase that got A.J. Brown?
Oh, I don't know. They're all dumb.
They're all ridiculous. They're all like one commonality. I mean, the Devontae Smith Calvin Ridley one was just, come on.
615-737-1045 if you would like to weigh in. Remember, NFL legend Warren Moon is going to be on the show later on. We're going to get into more of where these quarterbacks ended up landing. But we go to Peyton in Nashville, who wants to talk about day 2 in the draft. What's going on, Peyton? Appreciate the call.
Hey, what's going on, Buck? I think it was maybe 2019, Miami versus Florida, I want to say, the opening game. And I remember watching the Miami tight end and just thinking, like, just based off that game, he's got to be a first-rounder. I don't know what's happened since, but what do you think about Brevin Jordan being maybe tonight one of the picks we take? I'll hang up and listen. Thanks.
I appreciate the call. I mean, we just spent time ripping player comparisons, but if you want to do player comparisons, like so many people like to do, the player comp for Brevin Jordan, the tight end from Miami, who has largely been regarded as a day 2 pick. I think most people, again, there is very, very much unknown about this NFL draft. It should not be gospel, even though we got Caleb Farley preaching and rebuking things in the name of Jesus. It should not be taken as gospel that because he's being mocked, Brevin Jordan, in the second round means he's a second-round pick. But the player comp for Brevin Jordan is Jonnu Smith. And you still don't have a starting tight end, really, as far as I'm concerned. That's no slight on Anthony Ferkser. I just think that they need some help. They know that they need some help. Help is on the way. 615-737-1045. Chris in Nashville is up next here on 1045 The Zone. What's up, Chris?
Hey, how's it going? I was like to chime in on the Titans' first-round pick. I love it. ACC All-Player is All-Defensive Player of the Year. I love it, and I'd love for us to get that kid out of Purdue. They were mentioning earlier, the wide receiver. I think he'd be a good compliment for A.J. Brown. And also, if I could actually chime in, I'd like to chime in on the whole thing with Bill Belichick being kind of smug with Mac Jones following his lap. Of course he is, because Mac Jones fits well in Belichick's system. He's a dirty, cheating scumbag coach like Nick Saban is. So it fits perfectly that he gives Mac Jones.
Chris, he was so like innocent and unassuming, and then he just knifed Bill Belichick and Nick Saban.
Chris rebukes Bill Belichick.
You have been rebuked. I cast you out. I love callers so much. 615-737-1045. We're going to talk more about the NFL draft. We'll go through some of the things that happened last night in the draft and continue to take your reaction, give analysis on Caleb Farley, the Titans' first-round selection at 22 overall. I'm Buck Reising, live out here at 55 South.
Two Rivers. I'll play your thing next break. Coming back here. You're up.
A little bit of vibes here at 55 South on a Full Send Friday. Love me some Temptation here on 104.5 The Zone. Lucas, we are going to have to make something out of this, out of Caleb Farley's rebuking things. Now, you know, we want to respect everybody's religious affiliations, so maybe we just make it a rebuke in general. But I think that I would like to start rebuking things on a regular basis on this show. In fact, I think that we should we should incorporate Caleb Farley's voice into the many cast of characters. Liam Neeson, Bruce Drennan, we got Mad Dog Russo. Now I think Caleb Farley should be a part of the cast.
Well, how about instead of, and live producing the show here, but we do dumbest thing in sports this week every Wednesday.
Yes.
How about the number one, I don't know how to word this. We rebuke something in sports each week every Wednesday.
Okay. We'll workshop the title. It's a work in progress. That's okay. 615-737-1045. If you want to jump in on the conversation. Man, it felt good. We'll spend some more time on, in fact, let me do this first, because I know you guys want to talk mostly about Caleb Farley and also about who the Titans are going to be able to select today. So let me give you a list quickly before we get into what the NFL draft broadcast looked like. It's just so good to have something tangible to talk about. It's been so long between free agency and the draft. I can't tell you how much fun I had watching the NFL draft last night, which I did not expect, because for all of the things that I've done to complain about the pre-draft process, the draft was quite fun. But best players available remaining on the board right now. Let's give you a handful. We told you, JOK, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, the linebacker from Notre Dame, is still out there. Trayvon Moehrig, safety from TCU, one of Coach Mac's Horned Frogs. Azeez Ojulari, Rondale Moore, Tevin Jenkins, Asante Samuel Jr., Christian Barmore, Levi Onwuzurike, Joseph Asai, Elijah Moore, I should say. Richie Grant, who's a safety from UCF. Terrence Marshall basically rounds out the top 40 of players that they have ranked currently. I'm looking at a list on CBS.com in terms of best players available. Plenty of wide receivers, plenty of offensive line help, which don't forget you still need. 615-737-1045. Eli Wilson says, watch the NFL Network, and thank God they didn't go into the deaths of families like they did last year. Yeah, man. I really, I have a lot of love for all. I've got a lot of friends that work at ESPN, and I've got a good relationship with Mel Kiper just because of something fluky that happened where I ended up on Mel Kiper's radio show like every Saturday before the Titans playoff games in 2019. So me and Mel are boys, but something about ESPN's draft coverage is always so morbid to me. Like there's so much emotion in it. There's so much sad storytelling about all of and it's cool to see the backgrounds of these players. Everybody's got a different story. Everybody's had a different level of things that they've had to sacrifice in order to accomplish this one of the greatest accomplishments that an individual can have, to play in the NFL, to be selected as a pro football player. And to realize that dream, to know that it could be generational money for you and your family, to have the ability to play on one of the greatest stages, if not the greatest stage in American sports, I think it's a big deal. And so I appreciate the background of all of the players, but something about ESPN's coverage always just kind of makes me like, oh my God, I can't do this anymore.
It was much better this year in terms of that.
Yeah.
Last year was like an all-time. I don't know why they went so hard with it last year, but they drew it back a little bit. I think they listened to some people.
Yeah, well, somebody had to say, stop, just please stop. So yeah, NFL Network did a killer job. I saw our boy Mike Giardi all over the place. And by the way, again, I don't mean that to be any kind of critical of or hypercritical of ESPN, because I thought Diana killed it. Diana Rossini, our friend who stops by the radio show from time to time. So the draft coverage was good, although I listened to Titans radio during the draft coverage, but then in the commercial, I would go back and forth between, Titans radio, and then when Titans radio go to commercial break, I go to the NFL Network, and on it went. 615-737-1045. 1045 if you want to jump in on the conversation. There's some interesting trends that took place last night in the NFL draft, specifically with where players were taken and how they ended up with a lot of their college teammates. For example, Trevor Lawrence and the Jacksonville Jags, who I think got substantially better yesterday. I mean, it is, it's no great effort to get better from only having won one game, thus selecting first overall in the draft. But not just because of Trevor Lawrence, but they went back with their second of their 2 first-round picks, and they picked up Travis Etienne at 25, the Clemson running back. You saw Alabama players going to play with former Alabama teammates in Jalen Waddle and Tua Tagovailoa with the Miami Dolphins. You saw Jamar Chase with LSU instead of taking the tackle from Oregon, Penei Sewell, which I think I mean that one I hated, to be honest with you. Like, I think it's cool for when teammates who are in college get to be teammates in the pros, even if it is Cincinnati. It's just appears to be a little bit of a godforsaken franchise. I just think that Joe Burrow got just tossed around back there in the pocket, and he's an absolute stud. I think that he's going to be able to survive it in the same way that we're talking about Caleb Farley and a younger person's body having the ability to bounce back better. If you're sustaining injuries early on, hopefully they're not debilitating. Hopefully your body will have an easier time recovering. Or whether it's, as one of the commenters on Twitter brought up, whether it's a matter of, just pain tolerance, pain threshold. Unfortunately for backs, that's often the case. But I thought it was interesting for them to not take an offensive lineman in Cincinnati when Joe Burrow just absolutely gets the snot beat out of him in the pocket, and you're going to take a wide receiver instead. So instead of allowing Joe Burrow more time to throw to wide receivers, maybe to throw deep, give him a few extra, fractions of a second, you're going to get him Jamar Chase, which is going to put him in a good spot, but it doesn't matter if he's got, Jeffrey Simmons inside of his face mask while he's trying to get the ball off. It's a problem. I thought there were a couple of teams with questionable draft decisions last night. I really like the Caleb Farley selection, though. I really think it makes a lot of sense for the Tennessee Titans. 615-737-1045. Sam Livingston writes in on Periscope, they already had James Robinson, but Jags had to hashtag establish. Establish what? Establish that they're going to win more than one game this year? I mean, listen, I think that the Jags are interesting in the AFC South. The Texans are not going to matter. The Colts, everything, rises and falls with the idea that Carson Wentz may be salvageable. We have no idea. I think the most important player in the division, to be honest with you, is Derrick Henry. And that's not any kind of slight at Ryan Tannehill. That's not any kind of slight for anybody else on the Tennessee Titans roster. I just think he's the most important, the most impactful player in the division. Miles Myers on YouTube says, yeah, they established having an RBC now. I don't know what RBC stands for, and now I'm scared. I don't want to Ron Burgundy something in the microphone that I shouldn't say on FCC radio. 615-737-1045. The draft was fun last night, though. I don't know. You know what I kind of missed? The only thing that I kind of missed about the virtual draft is they had Roger Goodell's armchair out on the stage, and they had a fan for each team that was selecting in the first round sitting in the armchair. And, of course, the armchair is from Roger's basement, allegedly, if it's not an actual set. I don't know if we were actually inside Roger Goodell's house last year. But the thing I missed was casual Raj. This Raj was very corporate last night on the draft stage. I missed casual Raj in the sweater vest, laying back in the lounger, making the picks, half slumped over, eating peanut M&Ms. Like, I like that guy.
I thought he was okay last night.
I mean, he's corny.
I thought he interacted with the fans on the stage pretty decently.
Oh, yeah. No, listen, I would prefer, they did the impossible last year during the pandemic. They made Roger Goodell relatable. and I miss relatable Raj. That's all I'm saying. You're not going to miss, or you're not going to want to miss, rather, what's coming up next. NFL legend, Houston Oilers legend, Pro Football Hall of Famer, Warren Moon is going to join us in the next hour. We're going to spend some time on the quarterbacks. We're also going to ask him about A.J. Brown's tweet to him about potentially unretiring the number one for this franchise. All that and more, your reaction as well to the Titan selection of Caleb Farley, 22nd overall. I'm Buck Reising, and this is 104.5 The Zone.
most successful streaming and podcasting talent in Nashville is Buck Reising. And now he has a radio show to go along with it. Right here, it's Buck Reising on 104.5 The Zone.
You ready, Mace? Party people in the place to be. It's about that time. Yeah.
It is that time. Live out here at 55 South in Brentwood on 104.5 The Zone. Happy Draft Day 2. 3 selections for the Tennessee Titans. Right now, we'll see. We have not seen any movement. Now, I was curious, by the way, Buck Reising, Lucas Panzica here with you. Blaine and Mickey will be broadcasting live out here as well, as will 3HL. Ron Slay, lock the door. Somebody's going to have to. Slay's going to bring it loud. He's got some analysis. By the way, I saw Slay. Look at Ron Slay, by the way. Turned it into, a radio pro before our very eyes. He was teasing something that they're going to talk about today on 3HL on Twitter because Ron Slay may not necessarily have NFL experience, given that he was a Vols basketball player and a pro basketball player for some time, but he does have experience with back surgery. Now, Ron Slay has teased, and I will read the tweet for the good people who want to know what it is that Ron Slay is going to be talking about later. But what Ron had to say on Twitter is that this is the exact surgery, at Ron Slay 35. This is the exact surgery that they were talking about on 3HL 104.5 all week. I'm going in the stash and pulling out something special for this discussion today at 55 South. Tune in from 3 to 6 when we show. Look at Ron Slay teasing stuff on Twitter. 615-737-1045. Of course, your reaction all over the course of today. And Warren Moon coming up next. That is going to be very exciting. We'll talk with him about the quarterbacks in the draft. We'll also talk to him about, whether A.J. Brown is going to actually unretire or whether Warren Moon is going to allow A.J. Brown to unretire, the number 1 for the Titans-Oilers franchise. But first, your calls, 615-737-1045. Greg is in Rhode Island, and he wants to weigh in. Good morning, Greg.
Hey, what's up, Buck? I was watching last night because I wanted Kwity Paye from the beginning.
Sure.
Kwity Paye's from Rhode Island, so, he's like the pride of the state. He's the first player to come out of Rhode Island in 80 years that's going to make it big in the NFL, so to say the least. But I asked a buddy of mine who he wanted. He actually, before the draft, actually wanted Caleb. I got to be honest, I'd never heard of the kid. He wasn't on any of my mock drafts. I don't watch a ton of college ball. But then I went back and see what he did. I got to say I'm really impressed. So, yeah, I like the upside, but that was a shocker and a major disappointment that Kwity went to the Colts, where that dude's going to thrive, unfortunately.
Yeah, that was their biggest need. That's largely the reason why Justin, and thank you for the call, Greg. We have listeners all over the country. So cool. Rhode Island, Maine. We get people from Vegas. Titans fans all over the place. But what was interesting yesterday was, you had the Giants at 20, you had the Colts at 21, and then the Titans selecting, obviously, 22. And so Elijah Moore, who's, again, meaningless, the stock up, stock down that we do in the pre-draft process when very, very little information outside of the medicals change. But Elijah Moore had seen a substantial enough, at least in draft media, substantial enough rise in his draft stock that people were projecting that he might go in the late 20s. Rashad Bateman ended up going in the late 20s to the Baltimore Ravens, which is unfortunate for Rashad Bateman because, they don't really throw the ball that often. It's nothing against Lamar. It's just not really what they do. But Elijah Moore remains on the board at 22, and you saw Kwity Paye, and I honestly thought that the Colts would go left tackle, given that they've gotten a quarterback that they're trying to rehabilitate. But they ended up going edge defender. And so now Justin Houston's status with the Colts becomes much more uncertain. He's far more cost effective to pay Kwity Paye on a rookie deal than it is to bring back Justin Houston. Now, they may still do that depending on what the finances look like because they got money to spend. But honestly, if he'd have made it to 22, I'd have done that too. There were so many good options for the Titans in the draft last night, but this is the one that they placed the highest value on. John Robinson spoke about this last night, Caleb Farley spoke about this last night. about what the draft process has been like for him and now ultimately landing with the Titans. This is the Titans' first overall pick speaking with us via Zoom.
Well, this process has been absolutely bizarre for me, but landing in Tennessee has been great. And I'm enjoying every second of it. I'm extremely grateful. I thank God, thank Jesus Christ and my parents. I'm just extremely excited to get to Tennessee and get to work.
Extremely bizarre. 1,000%. 1,000%. I mean, I can't imagine how much crap this dude has had to shuffle through. And
you could tell how fed up he was when he was asked how often it was brought up with the back issues throughout the process. It was a one-word answer. He just said numerous.
And yeah, he goes, well, I'm so tired of talking about the back, so tired of talking about the opt-out. In fact, I'm gonna read this quote because I got such a kick out of him last night. Now, maybe he doesn't end up being like the kind of quote that Kenny Vaccaro is, but he sounds like he's going to be a good quote. He's got good energy, which makes me very happy outside of what he does on the football field. But Caleb Farley yesterday was talking, on answering questions about his back injury through the draft process. One-word answer, as Lucas said, numerous. on talking about, opting out of the 2020 season. I've talked about the opt-out 1,000 times, so there's no point to go back, but I feel great. It's been a weird situation. Now, you saw several people, and Penei Sewell and Jamar Chase obviously didn't have the kind of procedures that Caleb Farley did that would put his draft stock in question. But Jamar Chase and Penei Sewell were not affected by opt-outs at all, it seemed.
Not only the procedures. I mean, his mother had passed away of breast cancer. He didn't want to be in a locker room environment. I think he said he couldn't bear to lose another parent due to COVID. I think there were a lot of factors that went into his opt-out.
Oh, for sure. For sure. There is and I look forward to speaking with him, and we're gonna try and get him on as soon as humanly possible, because I think you guys will really enjoy getting to know a little more about this dude rather than a 13-minute Zoom while he's in a car after the draft and his head's still spinning. Like, I think once he was literally getting in the car, and I assume somebody was driving him. We couldn't quite tell, but he was definitely buckled in and answering questions, again, about his back right after he said, well, I can't remember who asked him, but the question was, well, how many questions have you answered about your back? Numerous. Okay, well, going back to the back is basically how the press conference went. Personally, says Eric Christian, I'd like to know more about the stability of Caleb Farley's back. That's coming in on Facebook Live. Well, I mean, maybe in another situation you might, but you got to remember who the head coach is here. And the one thing that Mike Vrabel is unwilling to compromise on is talking about injuries. It's just, how many times did John Robinson and Mike Vrabel say last night, no timelines? No timelines on the player. The agent isn't going to set the timelines. We're going to figure it out as the medical staff allows us to figure it out. Largely because it has a great deal to do whether John Robinson and Mike Vrabel are successful in this selection. But there's precedent, and they've done well with this process before. Hopefully, having the process a little more normalized will lead to better results, at least in the first round. 615-737-1045. Well, we're going to talk, and so I'm so excited. I've never gotten the opportunity to talk to Warren Moon. And he is going to join us coming up next. NFL Hall of Famer, Houston Oilers legend, obviously the Titans' history deeply rooted in the Houston Oilers. And the number one retired for all of the fantastic things that Warren Moon did over the course of his NFL career and all of the things that it took Warren Moon to get to the NFL. The backstory on this man is insane. But what we're going to spend a lot of time with Warren on is the quarterback rookie learning curve. Because I think, and it's not just Justin Herbert. I think Joe Burrow has a big deal to do with this. Had we seen more of Joe Burrow, maybe the conversation would be more about Joe Burrow than it would be on Justin Herbert. But Tua as well. I think the learning curve for rookie quarterbacks has largely evaporated. And I think that what you're seeing last night, it's the first time I've seen this kind of trend where you're going through the draft order and you're seeing how many different players are reunited with their team, with their former college teammates. Whether you're talking about, as we mentioned, Jalen Waddle going to the Dolphins to play with Tua, whether you're discussing, whether you're talking about Jamar Chase with Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals. Devontae Smith going to the Eagles and playing with Jalen Hurts. Like, you saw a lot of this to increase, and we spoke earlier on Trevor Lawrence and Travis Etienne, both going in the first round. The teams are trying to exacerbate, or probably a better word to use, remove the rookie learning curve, or make it as flat as humanly possible, because everybody understands the advantage that a rookie quarterback contract is and how much easier it is to win if you have an affordable quarterback. Everybody's trying to get these guys out there on the field right away. 615-737-1045. Man, we're out here live at 55 South in Brentwood. People are starting to stream in. The food, it looks fantastic. I'm partial to their shrimp and grits, which is something that, my waistline would tell me to avoid. But they also have a fantastic happy hour special going on out here. Happy hour Monday through Friday. So today, 2 to 6 p.m., we'll be broadcasting, by the way, out here until 6 p.m. Sunday all day at 55 South. So you can recap the entire NFL draft, and you can tie one on if you so choose. $3.50 drafts, $6 house wine and well cocktails. 55 South out here in Brentwood, where we will be broadcasting live from all day. I'm Buck Reising, and this is 104.5 The Zone. Back here on 104.5 The Zone, live from 55 South in Brentwood on this NFL Draft Day 2. Buck Reising hanging out here with you until 1 o'clock. Very pleased, honored, in fact, to be joined by Houston Oilers legend, NFL Hall of Fame quarterback, 9-time Pro Bowler, 2-time NFL passing yards leader, and 5-time Grey Cup champion, Warren Moon. Warren, good morning. How are you? Happy Friday.
Hey, how you guys doing back there? Happy Friday to you as well. Great first day of the draft.
Fantastic. It was really it was a lot of fun to have so much. I mean, I don't know if misinformation is fun, but to have so many unknowns about this draft, Warren, after the first two quarterbacks really seemed to keep me engaged the entire time, and the draft always does. But the way that there were so many quarterback prospects that were available for teams to select from really, I think, kept intrigue high.
Yeah, that's a pretty intriguing position these days. It's all about the quarterback. You got to have a good one in order to be successful in the NFL. So there were a lot of teams that needed that going into the draft, and they positioned themselves to where they could get one of these top 5 guys. And there's still a couple of good ones, I think, left in the draft as well. You got Kyle Trask still there and Kellen Mond from Texas A&M. I think those guys can be solid quarterbacks as well. So, yeah, the big intrigue, I think, was at number 3, who the San Francisco 49ers were going to take, and everybody thought it was going to be Mac Jones, but they ended up going with Trey Lance, and I think him sliding down to the Patriots was interesting, and then watching what happened with Justin Fields. So, yeah, the first 10 or 15 picks were very, very interesting in the draft yesterday.
Without question. Of the 5 quarterbacks that we saw go, we know obviously that Lawrence and Wilson were slotted 1 and 2 almost throughout the entirety of this pre-draft process, and I think Trevor Lawrence has largely been pegged as the first overall pick, since he was born at this point, it feels like. But which of the quarterbacks, you have Lawrence with the Jags, Wilson at the Jets, Trey Lance to the Niners. You obviously had the Chicago Bears trading up to go get Justin Fields, and Mac Jones with the Patriots. Which of the quarterbacks do you think landed in the best spot?
Probably Trey Lance, only because he's going to a football team that was 2 years out of the Super Bowl. They had a tremendous amount of injuries last year, but a lot of those guys are healthy again this year. And so they have a Super Bowl type of roster in San Francisco. I don't think there's a hurry for him to have to be on the field and play right away, which is a luxury for a young quarterback. And then he comes into a system that a quarterback doesn't have to dominate that system. They run the ball as well as anybody. I think they were in the top 5 in rushing last year. Kyle Shanahan does as good a job as any offensive coordinator or head coach in the league at calling plays. So I think Lance is in a really good spot. A lot of times when you go that high in the draft, you're going to a pretty crappy team. But because of what San Francisco did in trading up to that number 3 pick, they were able to get a really good quarterback for the future on a really strong roster. So I think his roster is the best right now.
Well, and you talk about he has the luxury of playing, or at least sitting for a time behind Jimmy Garoppolo. What do you make of the learning curve for rookie quarterbacks coming in right now, Warren? I don't think maybe it's just recency bias, given what we've seen guys like Justin Herbert and Joe Burrow before the injury, to a lesser degree, do in their rookie seasons. But do you think that NFL teams are trying to maximize the efficiency of rookie quarterbacks and get them on the field as soon as possible? I understand that the situations vary, but I was struck by the trend of teams drafting teammates of whether it's the quarterbacks or whether it's wide receivers who have played with the quarterbacks currently on the roster. I was struck by the amount of teammate pairing that the NFL draft seemed to bear out last night. I think that's the first time I've seen that trend, at least that obviously.
Well, I think coaches are getting much smarter as far as how they're putting together their rosters, and I think there's 3 things that go into these quarterbacks being so ready to play now. One, they start throwing the football a lot younger than we ever did. They're exposed to a lot more at a very young age, as far as back as middle school. They're in these passing leagues all year long. They're getting a lot of different reps throughout not only the football season, but in the spring and in the summer. They're being coached a lot better than they ever have before. A lot of these guys have quarterback trainers from the time they're in high school all the way up through college. So they come in very fundamentally sound and things like that. And then the NFL has done a smart thing, and they've kind of adapted their offenses to what these guys have been successful at from the time they were in high school and in college as far as the offenses that they're running. So they're adapting a lot of those college offenses to the NFL, which makes the learning curve a lot easier for these guys coming into the league. So you combine all those three things together, I think that's the reason why you see these young quarterbacks having success so early in their careers.
NFL Hall of Famer Warren Moon here with us on 104.5 The Zone. At WMoon1 is where you follow him on Twitter, on Instagram, at WarrenMoon1. Warren, the Atlanta Falcons at 4 selected Kyle Pitts, the tight end from Florida, who has so much hype around him that I almost feel like it's a bit unfair given what he may be able to actually do in his rookie season, understanding that he's a great talent. But they ended up going with Kyle Pitts over a quarterback, given that they did have several available to them. Does that decision make sense to you based on where Matt Ryan is in his career?
You know, I probably would have much rather gone for an offensive lineman, or either somebody on defense, because Atlanta's so bad on defense. But when you have a player like that, it's hard to pass him up. And I think what's going to take a lot of pressure off of him is having a Julio Jones on one side and a Ridley on the other side. See, he's not going to be the guy that has to make all the plays. So if anything, you know, you're going to double cover Julio Jones a lot of the time, and that's going to leave Pitts one-on-one with maybe some linebackers sometime, or a lot of times with a strong safety. So he's a matchup nightmare, especially with the other talent that you have out there. So I think he's going to do very, very well, especially having a quarterback who is as seasoned as Matt Ryan is. He'll get the ball to the right people that are open, and I think Kyle Pitts will be open a lot. So I think his transition will be easy into the NFL.
I think it makes it much more interesting with what we don't know about where Julio Jones may play next year, given the idea that the Atlanta Falcons seem to be shopping him and teams seem to be inquiring about whether he's actually available or not. That will be an interesting situation to watch play out. Warren Moon here with us on 104.5 The Zone. Speaking to that hype around Kyle Pitts, though, Warren, I kept watching him, and I've throughout the entire course of the draft process. I mean, the film is incredible on him, and you know that he's going to be able to do great things. But expectations around rookies. You've seen so many of these drafts. You've obviously been a part of professional football for an incredibly long time, and seen so many of these guys come in. How difficult can it be to manage the expectations when you're in a situation like Kyle Pitts is, regardless of position?
Well, as long as you don't put a lot of pressure on yourselves, and a lot of guys do that, I think you'll be okay. He seems to be a tremendously confident young man. They moved him around a lot at Florida. They put him in a lot of different positions, whether it was, inside the tight end spot, they put him in the slot, they put him out wide. So he comes out of an offense where it was very diverse for a tight end. And I don't think the tight end position is as hard to learn as the wide receiver position as far as coverages are concerned. But because he had the ability to play both, he probably knows coverages a little bit better than most tight ends coming into the league, because he's played so many different positions on the field. So, I think he's going to be in good shape. As long as he doesn't press, as long as he continues to just keep doing the things that he does, run good routes, get good separation, and catch the football, I think he'll be fine. It's always a learning curve for any rookie at any position. I think wide receiver might be one of the tougher positions to make that transition, because you're playing against a really good player every week. Where in college you might not have played against a guy who could even make it in the NFL maybe twice a season. But in the NFL, you're playing against that type of caliber competition every week, and you're playing against more sophisticated coverages. So that's why I think the transition for a wide receiver tends to be a little bit tougher than some other positions. But because he's a tight end but has wide receiver ability, I think he's going to do well.
Speaking of wide receivers, it seems that the talk of this draft has been about the depth in this wide receiver class, the prospects coming out. I feel like we've done that at least the last, probably 3 or 4 years. There's so much talent and so much raw athletic ability, but you're speaking to the learning curve and the difficulty of it. We've seen that happen to so many wide receivers coming in from the college game to the pros. Understanding who's already off the board, how many of the top wide receivers we've seen taken, and how many of them are still left. Is there a wide receiver maybe in day 2 at this point in the second or third round that you're looking at and saying that it would be an incredible value for maybe a team like the Titans picking at 53?
You know, I'd have to maybe look at the guys who are available, but going into this draft, they said there was about maybe 30 guys that had the ability to be drafted and probably make an NFL roster. So there's a lot of depth at that position going into this draft, and you saw it play out in the first 10 or 15 picks. There were probably 4 or 5 wide receivers that went during that time. So there's going to be a ton more. I think there might have been a total of 8 in the first round, which was kind of unheard of. But again, they're going to continue to keep falling off the board because, again, not only the quarterback position is being played so well with the young guys, the wide receiver position is being played well too because of the type of offenses that these guys are seeing. And not only are the quarterbacks getting greater training, but wide receivers are getting greater training and more exposure and more reps with throwing the football. So they're coming into the league a little bit more well prepared too. And that's why I think you see so many wide receivers making the jump and getting drafted and also having success early in their careers.
Warren Moon is here with us on 104.5 The Zone. On the wide receiver subject, I don't know how often you check your Twitter, Warren, but it seems that you are at least active on occasion. Did you see, I'm sure at this point somebody's brought it to your attention, what A.J. Brown, the Titans wide receiver here, had tweeted you about being interested in the retired number 1 for the Oilers and Titans franchise, given now that wide receivers and several other positions will be able to wear single digits. What did you make of AJ kind of, thinking about requesting that number of you and then, learning a little more about your history, not only in the NFL, but across your football career? A lot of people got a kick out of that here locally.
Yeah, it was brought to my attention, and I thought it was very flattering of him to reach out and say those things. But he kind of talked himself out of the number, so I thought it at least deserved a conversation because, I never wore the number as a Titan. I did wear it as a Oiler, and it was retired because I was an Oiler. But because everything switched over to the Titans, that number's never been worn as a Titan. So that's something I'd be willing to discuss with him if he wants to. Otherwise, we can leave it as is, but he's off to a tremendous career already early in his career, and I have really watched him play a lot, really love the way he plays the game, the way he carries himself, and it'd be an honor for him to wear that number if it got to that.
Well, I think he I don't know if humbled himself is the right word, but he did a little research, which was good to see, and then as you said, kind of talked himself out of it. It was pretty funny to watch play out on social media. Given what the Titans' offense is largely predicated around Derrick Henry, Warren, he's a throwback player unto himself, even though he appears to be a bit of an extraterrestrial. I don't think Derrick Henry is of this planet in terms of just I just think I've never seen anything like him from an NFL athlete standpoint. But what the Titans want to do, they're still looking for wide receiver help. A.J. Brown is a yards after contact receiver. They lost Corey Davis in free agency to the New York Jets. Still a big physical receiver, also focusing on yards after the catch. They acquired Josh Reynolds, who I know you've seen play in his time for the Los Angeles Rams, but are still seeking somebody who can have the potential to play on the outside, but also focus on their needs in the slot. What kind of skill set do you think best complements this Titans offense when you're talking about the wide receiver position?
Well, I think because they go so much play action, you want to have receivers that are physical and can run after the catch, and they have that in A.J. I think Reynolds is a very good pickup for them because he wasn't featured as much with the Rams, and I think he can be a guy that can really play if he is featured a little bit more, because whenever he was able to step up with the Rams and get those opportunities, it seems like he did. They just had a lot of receiver depth there, and I think that made him expendable. But yes, they definitely could use a guy in the slot who has that ability to get open quickly and make yards after the catch. Because of Henry in the backfield, they're going to play action a lot because they're going to run the football a lot, and the play action is going to be very successful. So you want a guy who can really get down the field too, especially when you get those safeties who are maybe peeking in there for the run too much and get caught, and next thing you know, play action and somebody's over the top. Where you're going to have a guy with blazing speed to do that. So if they could find a guy who can really run and really stretch the defense, I think they can get some bigger plays down the football field and make it a little bit easier for them to score.
NFL Hall of Famer Warren Moon here with us on 104.5 The Zone. Finally, Warren, the selection of Caleb Farley, the Virginia Tech cornerback that the Titans took 22nd overall. I've seen player comps. I don't know how seriously you take player comps, but people are talking about Marlon Humphrey and even a little bit of Jalen Ramsey, given the length and the ability, the clearly freakish athletic ability that he has the potential to play with. What do you make of the selection and how he will fit here in Tennessee?
Yeah, you figured that Tennessee would go after a corner because they kind of parted ways with Adoree Jackson and also Malcolm Butler, so they had to make some improvements there. And I think Farley is a very, very good pick, especially that far down in the draft. I thought he would go a little bit earlier, to tell you the truth. And it's unfortunate that he got COVID-19 and couldn't be at the draft, but I think he'll be fine. He's a young guy, and he'll recover from that. And like you said, he's a very aggressive corner, really breaks well on the football. He has really good size. So all the things that you're looking for in a young corner in the National Football League to kind of help build your defense. And they'll probably be looking for another one as well somewhere in the draft, maybe in the second or third round. I don't know what picks they actually have, but I'm sure they'll be looking for even a little bit more secondary help, because that's one of the reasons, or one of the places that they really needed to improve was in that secondary, and that's a great start getting Caleb Farley.
At WMoon1 is where you follow NFL Hall of Fame quarterback Warren Moon. A great pleasure to be able to speak with you, Warren. I know draft week is a busy time for all of us, but enjoy the rest of the draft and enjoy the weekend. Thanks for taking the time.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it, and tell AJ let's talk one day.
I'll let him know. Warren Moon with us on 104.5 The Zone. All right, we'll come back and we'll talk about the selections that the Titans have remaining, and we'll spend some time on where they are best suited, exploring those positions. I'm Buck Reising. This is 104.5 The Zone. Man, I'm telling you what.
Yeah, I rebuke that in the name of Jesus.
Caleb Farley does indeed rebuke that in the name of Jesus. He was a trip last night, man. He got the people going. Buck Reising here with you at 55 South in Brentwood on 104.5 The Zone. We're broadcasting live out here until 6. So, every once in a while I like to bother my friends. I like to pull them away from, their friends, family, loved ones, maybe even some food, and tell them to sit down, harass them. And we haven't done that yet with Mickey Ryan of Blaine and Mickey.
Hello.
Hi, Mick.
Hello. How are you?
I haven't harassed you yet on the radio show, bud.
I didn't feel special. Then I come in today, thought I'm going to get here early because I've seen this place but I've never been here. It's Cajun food, which I absolutely love.
Very good.
I have the stomach of the 23-year-old cat, which is well documented. What? I'm going to pay for whatever I eat, but it's going to be worth it. I cannot wait. But you finally asked me to jump in for a minute. I was very honored. I've seen many of people. It's like the Prince song. There were a lot of jockeys who were here before me. So
Well, I hope you won't take that as a means of disrespect, but I feel like, you got 2 hours to talk to yourself. You want to maybe get here in the morning. You want to decompress a little bit, but it's okay. We're happy to have Mickey Ryan at Mickey Ryan 1045 is where you follow Mick, of course, on the socials. And if you're listening to The Zone, you probably know that. So what am I doing telling you that? But Mick, what did you make last night of the selection? Because this was not the direction that you thought they were going to go. And that player happens to still be on the board.
He's very much available, Christian Barmore. Here's the thing. We all, I don't know, a month ago, 6 weeks ago, I think there was this general consensus. They're going to take Caleb Farley. That's who they're going to take. Everything seemed to point to that, right? He's going to slip. He's a top 10 talent, but he's probably not going to go in the top 10. Then you keep finding out more stuff about the back and the microdiscectomy, and Tiger had that, and Larry Bird had it, and you start hearing about people who had it, and you think, woof.
When you start citing letters and numbers of vertebrae,
yep.
My small brain, it gets concerned.
So all of that happens, and all I keep thinking is this. Every year, Titans fans fall in love with somebody. They fall in love with a pick. And they didn't seem in love with Caleb Farley. And eventually, all of their love, or most of it, was targeted towards Elijah Moore.
Sure. Also still available.
Yes, also still available. And I started thinking, they never picked the guy who we think they're going to pick, and they never picked the guy that the fans fall in love with, even if on the media fan side, if that winds up like J-Rob's dream scenario of sometimes the best available guy is also the guy that you need the most. Sometimes he said that winds up. Well, it's the same way for media and fans. So I thought, okay, who's the most no one is talking about guy? Defensive line.
Yeah.
And maybe the best defensive lineman in the draft is Christian Barmore. A lot of people thought so. So that's why I thought that's what he's going to do. So that's how I landed on Christian Barmore. It was the complete opposite. I turned out to be on the same side of the ball, defense.
Yeah.
But that's how I landed on Christian Barmore, who is, by the way, very much available.
And Barmore, it might be, if you believe the reporting out there, might be a bit of a jerk.
Nick Saban later rebuked that, not in the name of Jesus, but he did rebuke it.
Is Caleb Farley ready? Can I start casting people out in the name of Jesus? Can I start doing that?
Yeah, I rebuke that in the name of Jesus.
I'm saying, Nick Saban said, get it out of here.
Now, you know me. I'm from the country. I grew up on a gravel road right around the corner from a church that my ancestors built.
Yes.
And I've seen a lot of stuff rebuked in the name of Jesus. Never in a draft presser, especially over Zoom.
I fell out of my chair.
But I've been in a lot of church meetings where Jesus got rebuked in the name of one thing or another to rid that thing from someone's life. So he was ready to stop talking about his back. He was ready to stop talking about. I mean, he started ready to stop talking about back surgeries and when he was going to be available. He was done talking about that,
which I respect.
Yeah,
he is. We're hoping that when he gets a little more settled in. And a little less, maybe frantic is probably not the word. Maybe a little less edgy. That he will, that the quotes will expand and still have the same kind of oomph as rebuking, his availability for training camp. 615-737-1045 if you want to jump in on the show. Corey has weighed in on Periscope. You can watch Blaine and Mickey. You can watch 3HL. You can watch me if you are so inclined. On 104.5 The Zone TV. Corey writes in on Periscope, says, great show. I'm listening all the way in Atlanta. Were you surprised to see Art Smith go with the tight end?
No. My thing all along was this guy's supposed to be maybe the most generational, singular talent in a whole draft. And all you got to do is not overthink it. Just walk up there with a sheet of paper with his name written on it. Vontae Mack, no matter what. In this case, Pitts, no matter what. And they did it. And we saw, even with his task being changed for the team, Jonnu Smith had to block more maybe than he had envisioned as the season went on. But when he was a fully operational battle star, as they say in Star Wars, we saw what Arthur Smith could do with a tight end like him. Imagine now what he can do with a guy who's supposed to be a generational talent.
A fire-breathing dragon at tight end.
Yeah.
It also means I think Julio Jones is imminently more available for every team except the Titans.
They don't. You've said this all along. They don't have money.
How are they going to pay him?
Yeah.
Where are you going to find? I mean, listen. We did the same kind of thing with Bud Dupree and like the top flight pass rushers before free agency, and like the Buccaneers are just they're cooking the books with these voidable years. I don't understand how the finances make sense in Tampa Bay or, for that matter, New Orleans. But like $20 million is not going to fall out of the sky. Like, they have the ability to restructure. They have the ability to extend players if they so choose. They have not yet done either of those things. But to clear up $20 million worth of space, when you're going to have to do, they're still going to have to do something like that anyway, Mickey.
Yeah.
Before training camp cutdown day, to make sure that they are in compliance with the salary cap. They are not yet done on the financial side of things. I don't think Julio Jones complicating that, as much fun as it would be, certainly to talk about, I imagine to watch, it would be great fun, but it's just not feasible at this point.
Somebody asked me about it, and I said, I'll give you a great example. You know what I'd love to have? Like 50 acres in Leaper's Fork. I'd love to have that. I'd love to have it. I got a motorcycle. I like the country. I'd like to be out there. You know what? I couldn't afford that in my lifetime. I couldn't even dream of affording that. Well, that's Julio Jones.
Yeah, that's and
his current contract.
You would need a George Kittle size contract, because that's basically what George Kittle is doing in Tennessee, buying property and well, I don't know if he's riding motorcycles. I don't know if anybody in Atlanta or in San Francisco is listening. I'm sure that's in violation of his contract.
And what they don't know.
Well, listen, everybody, we're getting calls from all over the place today, Mick. I don't know if they don't know. We are live with Mickey Ryan at 55 South in Brentwood, 615-737-1045. If you want to come hang out with Blaine and Mickey, you can do so from 1 to 3. They will be talking about all of these things over the course of this morning. So I don't want to rob all of the content for Blaine and Mickey, or at least... least.
I'm known for about one good thought a day. I hope I used it up.
No, I'm teasing it. No, it's good. Very rarely do you and I get to well, that's not true. I do your show
Chop
every
it up
Friday.
Like real folk. Yeah, but, on your show, you do every Friday. You're on my show.
Yeah, and I'm a little less...
courtesy of Two Rivers Ford.
You guys, very much so. All of this draft coverage, by the way, brought to you by the fine folks at Two Rivers Ford. Two Rivers Ford, powered by Ford, driven by people. It's like I'm a professional, Mick.
Well done.
But with rounds 2 and 3, there are 3 picks, 3 selections available to them. Their first compensatory pick since 2013. Been a while since the Titans have had somebody good enough in free agency to garner, to work the comp pick formula. That's a tough
Usually
scene.
Guys leave with a lot of tread on the tires.
Yeah, that seems to be a trend. But here we find ourselves. Compensatory pick, 100 overall. They will have, at this point, assuming there are no trades, which is not a safe assumption, 4 picks in the top 100. Needs at this point, in order of importance to Mickey Ryan, are what?
Wide receiver is first.
Okay.
And Blaine and I talked about this a lot leading up to the draft. If this really is as deep a wide receiver draft as last year or similar, then that gave you the opportunity to go a different way in the first round, and that's what they did. But supposedly it's a deep draft at wide receiver. Now, is Elijah Moore going to be there at 53? Probably not.
Nope.
But there will be guys there who can help your team based on all the scouting reports. So I would say wide receiver, tackle, didn't go in the first round. That made a lot of people happy. And then tight end. That's the 3 positions I'd like to see them address over these next 3 picks in the top 100, which is 53, 85, 100.
Correct. That is correct. I think that they would be because a lot of people are advocating for them to trade up to go get Elijah Moore. And we do not know whether the trade up will be necessary. I think everybody, as of yesterday, thought that he was going to go to the Giants, and then he didn't go to the Giants. It was Kadarius Toney, which made 0 sense.
How about that?
I mean, we all know nothing. It's just so stupid.
What?
Yeah.
Even the guys on TV were like, What?
That's what I'm saying. Like, here's the beauty of this year's draft, right?
Yeah.
The NFL Combine is not just a means for me to go get drunk and act like it's spring break with all of my football friends. It is the biggest source of league gossip in the entire year, because Super Bowl, everybody's moving a million miles an hour. Yeah. It's a totally different environment. But the lack of Combine and environment at the Combine, outside of the Combine, around the Combine, in lobbies at Combine hotels, the lack of gossip created such a lack of, I think, groupthink from NFL talent evaluators, because everybody talks. Whether you're supposed to be talking to other teams, you know people on other teams' staff. Whether you're supposed to be talking to media or not, you're talking to people who you know in the media, whatever.
Sure.
Such a lack of groupthink this year that the draft board that are being projected in the mocks nowhere close to what what any of these individual teams have, because it's more draft room centric, I think, than it has ever been, and so much more difficult to predict, which made it, I think, a lot more fun, because then you have a Kadarius Toney, or the best thing to happen to a Chicago Bears quarterback in the history of Chicago Bears quarterback happening just with the selection that happened. They went up and got him, but still. I was fascinated, though, by the way that people overreacted, or reacted is probably the proper word, to Kadarius Toney, because, I don't know. I'm looking for a reason to make fun of Dave Gettleman, and there's always seems to be a reason to make fun of Dave Football Gettleman. Unbelievable.
He comes up big over and over again in that regard.
What's coming up on Blaine and Mickey today?
I got some interesting information about Elijah Moore last night that I'm going to share in the first segment of the program today.
Look at you. It's like Adam Schefter with the Aaron Rodgers report. He goes, I'm good enough about this. I know enough about this information. I'm confident enough about this information. Let's sit through a whole commercial break before I drop the biggest news of the NFL year. Mickey Ryan has that for you coming up today. And I'll be there for at least, 20 minutes.
No doubt. Yes, sir.
Am I there today?
You're there today. You're here today. We're here today, 55 South.
I'm Buck Reising. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Trending now at 104.5 The Zone.
It is 12:02. Good afternoon. I'm Lucas Panzica. The first round of the 2021 NFL Draft is in the books, and the Tennessee Titans took Virginia Tech cornerback Caleb Farley with the 22nd overall pick. Farley opted out of the 2020 season after racking up 6 total interceptions over his first 2 years at VTech, and did have concerns surrounding his 2 back surgeries, but was asked about the possibility of not receiving medical clearance for training camp and had this to say.
Yeah, I rebuke that in the name of Jesus.
His words, he expects to be ready to go by the fall. The Titans have the 53rd, 85th, and 100th overall picks in day 2. The best draft coverage continues right here on The Zone. Broadcasting live all day from 55 South in Brentwood. Titans Radio second and third round coverage picks up at 6. Reports surfaced before the draft yesterday from Adam Schefter that Aaron Rodgers is unhappy with the Packers and does not want to return to Green Bay in 2021. The Packers remain steadfast in that they have no plans to trade the 2020 MVP. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
He's been the best Titans reporter in town, so of course we had to get ourselves some of that. It's Buck Reising on 104.5 The Zone.
You ready, Mace? Party people in the place to be. It's about that time for us to. Yeah.
Man, it is that time, live on a Friday from 55 South here in Brentwood. Beautiful Brentwood, Tennessee. It is 104.5 The Zone. We're having a great time. Blaine and Mickey are going to keep the party going. 3HL right on after that. People are coming in. Happy hour begins at 2 if you would like to imbibe at 55 South. They've also got a killer brunch Saturday and Sunday, 10 a.m. to 2:30. 2-for-1 mimosas, 2-for-1 sangrias. All chicken and waffles, huevos rancheros. Yum. Sounds like a good time. In the meantime, we've been talking a lot about the NFL draft. We've been talking a lot about Caleb Farley. We've been talking about we had the opportunity to talk to Warren Moon. And so what Warren Moon had to say is we spent a lot of time on the quarterbacks, their landing spots, and what made the most sense, who was in the best position. And the conversation ultimately wandered to what A.J. Brown had tweeted at Warren Moon, asking about the number 1, the retired number 1 for the Houston Oilers and the Tennessee Titans franchise. So this was Warren Moon on the radio show because A.J. has entered the chat on Periscope. He's hanging out. He wants to know if Warren Moon actually said this. So, Lucas, if for A.J. Brown and the good people, we could deliver Warren Moon's message to A.J. Brown.
Yeah, it was brought to my attention, and I thought it was very flattering of him to reach out and say those things. But he kind of talked himself out of the number, so I thought it at least deserved a conversation because, I never wore the number as a Titan. I did wear it as a Oiler, and it was retired because I was an Oiler. But because everything switched over to the Titans, that number's never been worn as a Titan. So that's something I'd be willing to discuss with him if he wants to. Otherwise, we can leave it as is, but he's off to a tremendous career already early in his career, and I have really watched him play a lot, really love the way he plays the game, the way he carries himself, and it'd be an honor for him to wear that number if it got to that.
AJ, man, it doesn't get any clearer than that. Call Warren Moon. Go get the number, bud. 615-737-1045. It would be an honor for Warren Moon, who values the number as a Titan for sure. Or excuse me, the number as an Oiler for sure, as an NFL Hall of Famer in the number 1 for the Houston Oilers.
One more bite.
But for the Titans, this number is yet to be enshrined.
He said, "Tell AJ."
And so what we have from Warren Moon is a direct message because we closed out the segment with Warren Moon, and if you missed the podcast, go check it out. But Warren had a very direct message for AJ at the end of the show.
Tell AJ, let's talk one day.
Let's talk. AJ, give this man a call. I don't know if he's still in the chat on Periscope, but hopefully that got to him. And if it didn't, I'll make sure it gets to him because he should. I'm not somebody who's been interested in NFL players or like skill position players. The number changes. I'm really not down with the number changes, but that's a cool moment. There he is. Brown 1, Arthur. Done deal. All right, AJ. Go give him a ring. We're happy that we could facilitate here today on 104.5 The Zone. That'll be cool. That'll be cool to see. And Warren Moon is such an incredible person to be able to talk to. It was funny to see the way that all played out on social media with AJ, initially looking to seek out the player who had the number one retired during his great career in the NFL, and not just a great career in the NFL, but so many different spots and such a difficult journey to get to the NFL. All of the things that Warren Moon had to struggle against, but to see AJ kind of do his research in real time and realize, oh wow, this dude is this dude is a Hall of Famer. He led the league in passing twice, went to 9 Pro Bowls, and that's outside of everything that he did in the CFL. Out here winning Grey Cups on the regular. Warren Moon, incredibly cool. And very cool to be able to talk to him for the first time, and I'm glad that we could facilitate that for A.J. Brown. 615-737-1045 is the number that you call. 615-737-1045. Live out here at 55 South. Titans Draft Day 2. Titans radio coverage is going to begin at 6 p.m. tonight. They're going to be at Nissan Stadium. I heard the Virgin Hotel draft party was a great time. I saw that Lance Smith and Eddie George had a good time on the virtual draft party that they were hosting. Javon Curse, CJ2K, a lot of big names hanging out there at the draft parties, the various draft parties that the Titans were able to put on. But now rounds 2 and 3, very obvious needs at several positions because you've already drafted best player available in the first round. Now, fortunately for you, it worked out that it also satisfied a need. But wide receiver, still something that you need to address. Tight end, outside linebacker, offensive lineman, probably both tackle and guard because Roger Saffold is a good player, but at some point you're going to need a Roger Saffold contingency plan. John Moss tweets in or writes in on Periscope, can't wait to hear about Farley versus Brown battles in practice. Iron sharpens iron. Those are. I hope that we get a more normal training camp. Training camp was close to normal with the way that we were able to attend and watch practice, and the Titans did a great job at making that available to us. But with today's selections, Elijah Moore still on the board. He's a bit of an obsession for all of you. I want to know where you think, whether it's a position, whether it's a specific player, where you think the Titans should go with their 3 picks that they still have at this point, assuming that no trades are made, which, as we know with John Robinson, not a safe assumption. But 53rd overall, 85 and 100. 85 and 100, both in the 3rd round of today's NFL draft. What position do you want to see the Titans come out of day 2 with? I think they need a tight end, a wide receiver, an outside linebacker, not necessarily in that order. I think that Kendall Lamb and Ty Sambrailo is not an ideal competition at right tackle. I think you could use some help there, but people feel pretty good about the tackle depth in this draft. I don't know if that extends to the 4th and 5th round. I can't imagine it does, but you often find a draft steal, and John Robinson, honestly, eats in the 5th round. Got a feeling 53 is Osai if he is there, says Kenston Farmer on Periscope. You can weigh in on any variety of ways because we're live streaming the show. You can hang out. You can even if you're not coming to 55 South, which you should be because the food smells incredible. Mickey Ryan has a monster sandwich in front of him. Mickey, what the hell is that thing? Po' boy. Good God. I am so hungry now. This show it's such an inconvenient time. It is being posted on the, where is that going, Rich? On the 104.5 The Zone Instagram handle. Instagram story. Go check it out. At 104.5 The Zone is where you follow the radio station for documenting all of the things that we are stuffing into our faces before Mickey and Blaine and Mickey begin, and immediately after when I go, face first into one of those things. That looks delightful. 615-737-1045. The situation tonight for the Titans. Let's read you some names that are available that they might be interested in. Wide receivers, there's obvious talent there. Elijah Moore, Terrence Marshall,
Alex from Nashville,
Amari Roger, the USC wide receiver. There's a couple of them, but Amon-Ra St. Brown, little bit of my Egyptian heritage, it seems. And Amon-Ra's first name, Sun God, 615-737-1045. But first, we go to the phones. Lucas, who we got?
Alex from Nashville.
Alex from Nashville is here with us on the radio show. What's going on, Alex? Uh-oh. Did Alex sink into the sports talk radio caller C just evaporated?
His question, he did give me his question before I put him on. His line fell there, but it was, is it possible the Titans re-sign Dennis Kelly to a one-year deal, which I told him probably not.
Speaking of Dennis Kelly, that jerk. I mean, I don't know, probably not. Listen, you're going to see a third wave of free agency. You're going to see a third wave of free agency after teams work through their draft, which is often the case. But this year it's a little different because you have a lot wider variety, a lot bigger names. Dennis Kelly, maybe you don't consider to be a big name, but he's a substantial piece for the right team. Now, I don't know if Dennis is interested in coming back, but speaking of Dennis Kelly, that jerk, I had a bad moment with Mike Vrabel and John Robinson last night on the Zoom call. I was unprepared to ask my question. I didn't even realize that I had requested to ask a question in the chat, but apparently I did, and I was distracted. So Robbie Boren of Titans PR calls my name. I'm unprepared. I'm doing the A to Z Sports live stream draft show during the press conference. I've muted my mic on the draft show. I'm doing the Zoom call on my iPad, and I'm trying to scramble to figure out how to unmute myself on the iPad, and I posted the result of that interaction where Mike Vrabel just the worst eye roll.
You could feel the disappointment exuding through the Zoom.
Is it a good thing or a bad thing that I don't feel like those don't faze me anymore? Like I feel like it's we're heading into year 4 with Mike as the head coach here, and there have been so many dismissive looks. There have been so many eye rolls. There have been so many moments where he just, rips one of us for being stupid, like not being able a year plus into the pandemic, understanding how to unmute myself on Zoom, even if I'm on my iPad. Like just it doesn't even bother me anymore. The way that he just stares through my soul. I feel like it's a bad thing. I feel like I need to break. The only way to be held accountable, it seems,
Matt coming up, is
through public shame. But who has nothing to be ashamed of ever for anything that he's ever done in his life? Coach Dave McGinnis, Titans Radio. Titans Radio's head coach joins us next to talk all things draft, Caleb Farley, and so much more here on 104.5 The Zone. Man, everybody's trying to vibe on a Friday. The vibe is good out here at 55 South in Brentwood on 104.5 The Zone. I'll tell you who killed it last night. Titans Radio. The entire crew. Rhett Bryan, Mike Keith, Amy Wells, Coach Dave McGinnis, who joins us now on 104.5 The Zone. Mac, I have such a great appreciation for the work that the four of you and everybody else who goes into the production of that thing, because I know it's an incredibly big team effort. But I have so much appreciation for the work that you guys do, because now working at The Zone, I get to see what Rhett does behind the scenes, and I get to kind of understand the process that you all go through. It couldn't have been better executed last night. Congratulations. I know you guys have 2 more rounds to go tonight when Titans Radio takes over at 6 o'clock, but just an incredibly job well done by all.
Thank you, Buck. It's very kind of you to say. I mean, we take great pride in what we do. Of course, that stems from, and again, I thought the opening was tremendous.
So
with Larry
cool.
Stone, because basically Larry Stone and Mike Keith started, Titans Radio. And to me, it's something that Mike Keith and, coming from Larry Stone and continuing on, have always taken great pride in what we do. That's why when I came back, I mean, it was like joining a really good put together staff. I mean, they just, the amount of detail that is involved in all of it and the work, and we love doing it. We really enjoy doing it. Everybody melds with each other. I thought that, Amy, that was her first time to be able to host it with Rhett Bryan. Amy and Rhett Bryan hosting it, early on, and then Mike Keith, of course, driving it as he always does. And then I'm trying to put in some comments every now and then, like I know what I'm talking about. But anyway, it was so much fun. The people really enjoyed it. It was a great party. Got to see everybody. I saw Bert Nyhill and Gil, and was able to see Amy Adams Strunk. I mean, the whole thing was just great. It really was, and all the fans. And we're going to do it again tonight with a big group. And so thank you for saying that. And we're going to try to crush it again tonight.
And they certainly will. Of course, Coach Mack, and so much of what Titans Radio does is brought to you by Farm Bureau Health Plans. Healthcare coverage from Farm Bureau Health Plans is like an extra set of pads when you need them the most. They've been protecting Tennesseans since 1947. Give them a look there at Farm Bureau Health Plans. All right, Mac, so I listened to the coverage at the start. You guys, they kind of forced you, maybe not forced you, but they set you up to make a prediction or a player who you would like. You gave several options for the Titans at 22, but the first name out of your mouth was Caleb Farley. Caleb Farley, the selection for the Titans at 22 last night, the corner out of Virginia Tech. What do you like about him?
Well, everything. And I mean, that wasn't a hard evaluation when I started watching that 2019 tape. And,
yeah.
I've got a lot of contacts around the league, and I have some position coaches call me early on in this process once they get involved. And, several secondary coaches called, said, Mac, have you looked at this kid? And I said, yes. And he said, well, what do you think? And I said, yes. I mean, that's just it. It was easy to evaluate. Now, he's played corner for 2 years. There's a lot technically he can still get better at, but he's got all the physical tools and he's got the temperament for it. I just love how smooth he is. I love his ability to stay in phase. He's a hip to hip guy. He's got length. He's got speed. I mean, physically the traits were not a hard evaluation for me. After all these years, I can recognize good pretty quick when I see it. And so, and I know nothing about the medical. We all know what the medical has said.
Right.
John Robinson, they asked last night, Mike Keith asked a very relevant question, and Amy Wells did too, about what's going on the morning of the draft. What do you do? And I said, one of the final things you do is you get with your medical people and all the medical questions that you have, you get them reaffirmed and finalized. And then the head coach, the general manager, and the owner meet. And then they discuss, okay, here's the issues. Are we willing to go here? So clearly they're very, very comfortable with it. But at 22 in this draft, I mean, as soon as he gets up ready to go, that's a big, big get, Buck, because I heard you say this, and you're 100% right. It was a really good athlete at a position that they needed to get. And so a lot of times some things have to happen for those two to marry up, and it was nice. I love the pick. I loved it.
Best player available without question. And you have at least from media perspective, from fans perspective, from all of our perspective, you have no ability to evaluate the medicals yourself, and not that like any of us would be able to evaluate the medicals, but you trust their staff and you trust their confidence in the ability to have done a thorough evaluation on them. And as Coach Mack has said very correctly, that the first thing that you would do is recheck the medicals on draft day. Coach Dave McGinnis here with us on 104.5 The Zone, courtesy of Farm Bureau Health Plans. Mac, Vrabel didn't want to get into it last night, understandably so. It's the only thing he wants to talk about less than injuries, which, of course, they took a player who was coming off of an injury. But he didn't want to get into where exactly Farley might fit within this Titans defensive secondary. Now, I understand what we saw from Christian Fulton last year was basically in two parts, where he started the bulk of the season at the beginning playing primarily in the slot, and then injuries forced him to do a little more on the outside after he returned from injury. But where is the best use of Caleb Farley in this Titans defense, understanding what we know about it?
Well, I mean, when you watch him, I mean, he can play both.
Yeah.
And Mike Vrabel, I think, answered like that, not because he didn't want to, it's because he's going to wait and see. Yeah. And I still don't think they're through with the secondary, Buck. And so that's going to make a difference. But he is a piece that, to me, look, I was blessed. I've coached some great players in my time, and one of them was Aeneas Williams, a Hall of Fame cornerback, when I had him with the Cardinals, and he was a match corner. So, I would match him every game on their best receiver. We were in the NFC East then. I'd match him on Michael Irvin twice a year, but then when we played other teams, and depending on where their best receiver lined up, that's where I would match him. So if they're going to play some match coverage, I mean, he can match with anybody that you want to. Now, how they want to get into it as far as first through third downs without matching, that's up to them, but they've got time to do that, to figure that out. But his skill set, I mean, he's somebody that you can play just where you need to play.
Coach Dave McGinnis of Titans Radio here with us on 104.5 The Zone.
Coach, you mentioned he only has played 2 years as a pure quarterback in high school, wide receiver. Oh, can you hear me now, Coach? Sorry about that.
I got you.
You mentioned he'd only played 2 years as a corner at Virginia Tech. Quarterback in high school, wide receiver when he got to campus. Considering only the 2 years he spent at that position, how much does that add to his value when you think about his skill set as a ball carrier? And is there anyone that comes to mind that you've evaluated in your career that had that history as a ball carrier, made that quick transition, and made it pretty seamlessly?
You know what, really, and I like the question. I can't, right off the top of my head, but I will tell you this. A lot of corners that come into this league in their past history have either been running backs or have been wide receivers, okay? And so he's not the first one. And mainly those types of guys that can make that transition. Here's why I like it, that he's able to make the transition. And you can see it in some of the things that he does, playing down in the secondary now. As a former receiver, he can really track the ball in the air. And sometimes that's hard for corners to do. A lot of times when you're grading traits on a cornerback, one of the things that you downgrade sometimes is they're great in phase, but once the ball gets in the air, they kind of, they can't hold their water. They start stumbling a little bit with it. This guy can track the ball in the air. And so I've seen guys that have gone through this transition. But if you've got, and plus he's got really good hands. I mean, his catching ability is really, really good. So what I'm saying is this: there's been guys that have done this before, and the issue is if you've got a guy that has the temperament to switch, then some of those ball tracking skills that receivers bring and the hand catching skills are a plus for a secondary player.
Coach Dave McGinnis is here with us on 104.5 The Zone. Mac, day 2. Rounds 2 and 3, plenty of good talent left on the board for certain. Very much falling in line with some of the needs that the Titans still have. They had the good fortune to be able to draft best player available at 22 and also have it satisfy a need last night. But now we look at wide receiver, tight end, edge defenders. There are several. What are you kind of going into round 2 and saying, this if the situation arises, because I think that, it would be my first inclination, Mac, to say that they probably should avoid trading up if humanly possible. They need depth as much as they do need starters at this point. Am I wrong in thinking that way, I guess, is where I should start?
No, you're right. And John Robinson said he would like to keep 9 picks.
Right.
Because this team needs to retool. And he understands that. That's where this team is now. And you're at different stages as a team, season to season. But anyway, you're right. I mean, anything besides quarterback and running back, I think is wide open. And going through it with 2 rounds now, when we put these pods together, now day 2, see, it used to be you would reset the draft, okay, because you draft rounds 1, 2, and 3 on day 1.
Yeah.
So the big reset day would be for the second day, which would be round 4 through 7. All right. This is last night was a reset night, okay, for all the staffs. And today will be a reset day because you are looking now at 2 pods of players, second and third. And now the separation of those becomes a little bit more of need and a little bit more of the holes where you have them. I mean, I'll go through some of the pods here that I've got real quick. Just, the tight ends, Freiermuth, Brevin Jordan, Tommy Tremble, and Hunter Long.
Yes.
Those are kind of the guys that I've got, in that tight end pod. The receiver pod that you talk about, we got Rondale Moore from Purdue. Terrace Marshall from LSU is still out there, is a player that I like. Diane Brown from North Carolina. I talked about him last night. Elijah Moore, whose name has been, on a lot of people's minds, for a while here with the Titans. Dwayne Eskridge from Eastern Michigan. Amari Rogers from Clemson. Amon-Ra St. Brown from USC. Nico Collins from Michigan. So Tyler Wallace from Oklahoma State. There are receivers.
So many.
And so I've gone through the second pod to the third pod. So I'm going to have my eye on all of those guys. And then the offensive tackle is still a viable position for me. Tevin Jenkins, to me, is at the top of that pod that's going on. Liam Eichenberg from Notre Dame. Samuel Cosme from Texas. Walker Little from Stanford. And then the guy I talked about last night, when we did the virtual presentation, for the virtual party, was, for later on in the draft, was Brady Christensen from BYU, an older player because a lot of those BYU guys are, especially offensive linemen. James Hudson from Cincinnati, Dylan Radins from North Dakota State. And so there's players, interior offensive line, I heard you talking about the possibility of replacing or starting to replace, because Roger Saffold is a wonderful player. I've been with him for a long time in his career. But, you got Jalen Mayfield there from Michigan. That's a nice guard. Ben Cleveland from Georgia. Deontay Brown, Alabama. Robert Hainsey from Notre Dame, who I really like. Trey Smith from Tennessee.
Yes.
This is going to be Trey Smith's day today. Today is going to be Trey Smith's day. So there you are there. So, just giving you now, the edge rushers were interesting to me, the way they came off. Azeez Ojulari is still there on the board. I really like his game a lot. Carlos, as Rhett Bryant says, Boogie Basham is there from Wake Forest. Joseph Osai from Texas. Ronnie Perkins from Oklahoma. And then the Patrick Jones II at Pittsburgh and Jordan Smith at UAB are really interesting guys. And what I'm doing, I'm putting second and third pods together just for our listeners. And then the corners, they're still there. Tyson Campbell from Georgia. Eric Stokes went last night late just because of his speed factor. But Tyson Campbell is a good athlete. Elijah Molden from Washington. Asante Samuel Jr., who I like. I like his cover skills. Fadi Melifonwu from Syracuse. Paulson Adebo from Stanford. There's guys out there, Buck. It's going to be very, very interesting. And this is the part that gets fun to me, because now, you can pretty much, you don't know exactly where they're going, but skill sets for guys that at least stick out a little bit for that first pod are there. These is when you start separating people. So this is one of my favorite days of the draft.
It's not like you can tell through the excitement in your voice, Mac. You don't sound like you're having any fun at all. Mike Keith, Coach Mac, Rhett Bryan, Amy Wells, they're going to kill it again tonight on Titans Radio for rounds 2 and 3, coverage beginning right after 3HL here on 104.5 The Zone and across the Titans Radio Network. Mac, I don't want to – we don't know what teams' draft boards looks like, so I don't know if this is a fair question for me to ask whether anything surprised you based on how the draft order ended up breaking. There is so little information out there about this draft, given the lack of, just general meetings that the NFL has had the opportunity to have. But that being said, was there anything that kind of took you by surprise based on the way the first round went?
Well, the order of the quarterbacks.
Okay.
That's number one. And to me, the effect of the quarterbacks on this draft, because you had people taking different players, and then all of a sudden, we were sitting there doing the draft, and I think you heard Amy Wells say, there hasn't been very many trades yet. And I said, well, this is, and Rhett and I both said, this is kind of the sweet spot. And then bang, all of a sudden, the earth shifted on its axis when Dave Gettleman made a trade.
Yeah.
Okay. And so then once those things start happening, and then I think it's just like we were sitting there. There's some things you just know. That Jerry Jones was sitting there wanting Patrick Surtain.
Oh, so badly.
He was sitting there. And as soon as Patrick Surtain is taken, how quick did they trade? And so what had happened is they already knew there's a chance we're going to lose him. So they'd already started working that thing out. The one guy, Buck, and I like saying this because you ask good questions. The one guy that came off of a pod that was a little bit away from where we had, okay, hold on, that's Roger Goodell calling me.
We can put him on, Mac. We can do that if you want.
We probably don't need to.
He's calling in the Titans pick right now. This is why you listen to Titans radio. Max Rolodex, by the way. It's one of the most ungodly things I've ever seen.
I didn't mean to talk over you.
It's okay. Go ahead, Mac.
The one guy that kind of came out of sync for us was Peyton Turner from Houston, the edge rusher. Okay, that was the one guy that came a little earlier than I had him slotted. In my pod. So that surprised me a little bit.
Coach Dave McGinnis of Titans Radio here with us on 104.5 The Zone. They are going to have so much fun giving you guys the best coverage. Nobody does it better than Titans Radio. I don't just say that because I know these people, they're my friends, but because I know how hard they work at this particular thing and really at everything that Titans Radio does. So well produced, so well executed, and so very informative for all of the fans listening of football in general to follow along with. Mac, have a fantastic broadcast tonight. Of course, all of it presented by Farm Bureau Health Plans. Let Farm Bureau Health Plans coach you through it. They have been protecting Tennesseans for so long and making sure that Titans Radio provides exceptional coverage. Mac, have a great broadcast. Thanks for stopping by. I know you got to be worn out at this point a little bit.
Bug, thank you, brother. Thanks, Lucas. Really appreciate you guys. I'll talk to you. See ya.
Absolutely. Coach Dave McGinnis here with us on 104.5 The Zone. 55 South in Brentwood is packed, man. If you're not here, you're missing out. And if you're not hanging out on the radio show for the polls, you're missing out as well, because that's coming up next. I'm Buck Reising. This is 104.5 The Zone. What is this on a Friday? This feels a little hot and heavy. Here on 104.5 The Zone, little Outcast. Get you through until Blaine and Mickey coming up at 1. We are live, by the way, out here at 55 South in Brentwood. It is jam-packed. The food looks fantastic, smells even better. The drinks look to be quite refreshing, and the weather is beautiful. By the way, weekly specials. Monday, $6 guacamole. Tuesday, half-price bottles of wine. Wednesday, $6 margaritas. 55 South in Brentwood. Kind enough to let us hang out here on 104.5 The Zone. We've had such a good show today. Lucas, I feel refreshed. I feel better than I have been about a day of content than I have in so long. I'm so happy the mock drafts are over. It's my least favorite time of the year. Lucas, you got me?
I got you.
Okay. Just nothing on that? Thanks. Oh, God. What are the polls?
I had no response to that.
Get out of here. Just
are
do the
you
polls.
in or out on the Titans drafting Caleb Farley?
Yeah.
90% are in.
90%?
Yeah.
Okay.
Pretty good consensus.
Maybe
there. Although Adrian does reply, says, for once I wish we could draft someone who plays day one instead of waiting 4 or 5 games for them to play. But I do not know that is an issue with Caleb.
Yeah, we have no idea, right? I mean, it's just nothing to get bent out of shape about now. You have no reason to. Enjoy I mean, the amount of tension. Armando Martinez writes in on Periscope crickets of Lucas. Yes, Lucas just clearly checked out, clearly already into his Friday, but he has 2 more hours to hang out with Blaine and Mickey, so he better get it in gear. Just slacking today. No, Lucas done a great job. Great job all week, by the way, buddy. Great job getting Warren Moon. Like, I'm not nice enough to you on air. I know I say nicer things to you during the commercial break, but good job out of you this week. It's been a good one.
Great job by me.
Great job
Who
by you.
is QB1 for the Chicago Bears? We hadn't talked about this today. Justin Fields or Andy Dalton? 79% say Justin Fields.
That is incorrect because according to their Twitter account, it's Andy Dalton. So 79% of you are wrong.
Literally the Chicago Bears.
Just so stupid. Don't press send.
Who do you want the Titans to take in the second round? A lot of Elijah Moore here, trading up to get Elijah Moore from Sean. Diami Brown is the ace in the hole, according to Mike Kolick, not Mike Golick. Chris says Rondale Moore, Amari Rodgers, or Perkins. And another Ronnie Perkins, the edge rusher from Oklahoma. Elijah Moore. A lot of Elijah Moore. But you got to think that would take trading up and having to give up some draft capital.
Don't keep it, or don't do it. Keep your picks. You got too many needs. In fact, find a way to get more picks. If you're going to be heartbroken if it's not Elijah Moore, I would say to you, just, come to terms with that now.
We hadn't really talked about him, but Amari Rodgers, who one listener commented, so insanely productive at Clemson for the last 2 years, really hasn't made any kind of. We haven't talked about him. I don't know that we've said his name once. He's probably maybe a late second round, early third round guy.
Yeah, for sure. Here's the problem, right? You get caught up, and here's where we should have some public accountability, right? It is our job to talk about the things that the audience most cares about. And I think sometimes, at least me, Lucas does a better job than I do, but I get so obsessed with the largest set of the audience that I let some things that are worthy of discussion fall through the cracks. I feel like that's what we've done. And I won't just, I'll include myself in this for sure, but I think the larger draft media, you get so obsessed with the top names at wide receiver, especially when there are so many wide receivers in this draft that you are neglectful in some of your coverage of them. And I think that's kind of what's happened here. Because Teron Davenport's been doing a great job with the draft evaluation process. And as long as I've known him, as long as he's been covering the Titans, and he's been on Amari Rodgers for the Titans since damn near day one, it feels like. So there are some people doing it, but it's people smarter than us.
Should the Titans trade up for Ole Miss wide receiver Elijah Moore? 75% of over 500 votes are saying yes.
Nope, don't do it. Keep your picks. Don't do it.
Jake comments, can anyone tell me what Elijah Moore does that Rondale Moore can't?
I think that is an excellent question.
I mean, obviously, aside from the lack of production and Rondale Moore with the multiple injuries, I mean, the guy has not had a good season since his freshman year because of the injuries, Moore was insanely productive under Lane Kiffin at Ole Miss last year.
Okay, well, Lane Kiffin has the ability to do that to some people, and that's not to take anything away from Elijah Moore because he was a stud. But I have seen Rondale Moore at peak Rondale Moore. There is nothing that Rondale Moore can't, or there is nothing that Elijah Moore can do that Rondale Moore cannot do.
But that also begs the question, and I know we don't have the medicals they have, but yeah, okay, gamble on Caleb Farley, who would probably be the number one corner, if not for the back issues. Do you gamble on a guy like Rondale Moore in the second round that has hardly played in 2 years with injuries? I mean, how many times can they keep doing that before it does end up coming back to bite them?
Until it comes back to bite them, right? I mean, I don't mean to dismiss the question, but they have the medicals. What do we know? If they didn't get if their evaluation on Rondale Moore was incomplete, I feel like I said the same thing about Caleb Farley yesterday. If their evaluation on Caleb Farley had been incomplete because of what this pre-draft process, more normal than last year, but still not completely whole. If there are still gaps in your medical evaluation, then don't do it. I would have said the same thing about Caleb Farley. John Robinson said our medical staff has seen a bunch of injuries in the NFL. They are very confident in what they see and what he will be able to do when he is fully right. So if the medicals are there, do it. If not, don't. Just that easy.
Last one for the day. Which former Vols player gets drafted first, Trey Smith or Josh Palmer? 82% are saying Trey Smith.
He said today is Trey Smith's day. Now, I'm not disputing that the second or the third round is Trey Smith's day, but I have a sneaking – I'm not going to say that Josh Palmer is going to be picked first because I don't think that would happen, but I would be shocked to see Josh Palmer not go today. NFL people are in love with this guy, and Tennessee did him dirty by not allowing him to showcase more of his ability.
I could very much see Josh Palmer being taken over Trey Smith. I imagine Trey Smith has fielded as many questions about blood clots as Caleb Farley has about his back.
That's a good question.
But it feels like the type of thing that will make a prospect fall just thinking about the longevity of his career, just his entire career arc long term. For Tennessee, it was about, okay, can we get him back to play out his senior year to be able to improve his draft stock? And they did. He had no issues. But in terms of a 10-year NFL career, even if everything checks out, teams are still going to have doubts, right?
Oh, sure. No, I'm. It's honestly, I should be fine the more that I say it because I should find a different way to say it. But people are looking for reasons not to draft you. That's what this is. Trey Smith has that as we won't call it recurring, but he has that on his track record, for lack of a better term. And for more hot takes like that, you can listen to the Ultimate Tennessee podcast with Lucas Panzica every
Wednesdays with Will Bowling.
Every Wednesday with Will Bowling, who is currently making sure that everything runs smoothly here on 104.5 The Zone TV. The fun continues. Tonight we will see whether they create more draft capital for themselves, whether they do what I would think to be a little bit untenable and trade up, and who they end up selecting. I think it is going to be fascinating, and I think they're in a good spot. I mean, all of this is, like, I'm not going to sit here. I opened the show with this, right? I'm not going to sit here and give you draft grades after this is done. We don't know. I'm not going to sit here and tell you who's risky and who's not. We really don't know. I mean, we know who has greater risk associated with them. But if the Titans come away this evening with a wide receiver, a tight end, and an outside linebacker, and here, I'll even order them for you. A tight end, a wide receiver, and an outside linebacker. In that order, I would be quite satisfied with what they have been able to do. I've been quite satisfied with with the shows that we have done. This week, they have been spectacular. The entertainment is going to continue live here from 55 South in Brentwood. Have a fantastic weekend. Enjoy rounds 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, and 7 of the NFL Draft. We'll be back on Monday to recap all of it with you here on 104.5 The Zone.